So what is SpecDD? SpecDD is a hybrid agile software development method for managing software projects. It is an agile method. It is based on the fact that pure agile method like Scrum in the real world is very useful. It is effective to improve a development team's productivity, but also recognize that pure agile method lacks of the scalability for multi-team, large agile projects. So SpecDD is designed to be in a hybrid agile method and is also designed for managing both agile and non-agile processes. So how developed methods are being used in the real world projects? Based on leading analyst firms market survey, we see a number, similar number, consistent number like this slide shows. As of today, or end of last year, most of the development teams actually do not use any specific method to manage their development processes. 30% of the small business teams use agile method, 19% use iterative, 7% use waterfall, and 6% use measurement-based. Measurement-based include also CMMI, this kind of method. And for enterprise, bigger company development teams, the number is similar, and 30% use agile, iterative, 20%. So you would conclude, as of today, the leading method is agile. If you include iterative method to be a kind of agile method where development is more divided into iterations, then really majority of the teams are using agile development method. And while you will conclude the development method are being shifting from more traditional waterfall-like process to agile process. But then this slide shows you something interesting because for those teams who are using agile, they actually practice agile process often with a hybrid practice, meaning like 38% of the agile teams are actually mixing both multiple agile method, and 35 are mixing agile method with traditional method. Only 27% of such teams rely on pure single agile method. So what does it mean? It means in the real world, when development teams start to practice agile, they realize the needs of customizing agile process to include traditional method best functions such as quality management, such as resource planning, such as requirement management with the agile method. And often people mix agile process by using best practices functions from multiple methods, from Scrum, from XP, So before I continue, I would like to take a poll on how many of you are using Agile and how familiar you are familiar with, and 50% are familiar with Agile but not practice it. And so right now we have about 48 attendees now. So meaning, indeed, Agile is becoming the future of development. So while all of you know Agile method, but as Agile becomes the main development method, Agile clearly is showing that it's the future of development is Agile. But as a founder of a SpecDD development method, I started to study Agile 8 years ago. I also realized that the future of development is Agile, but I believe the future of Agile is hybrid. That doesn't mean I don't like pure Agile method. Method like a Scrum, to me, create an Agile culture for development teams to enjoy the productivity gain. It makes the industry of software development to enjoy a much more practical and easily useful Agile method. And it actually is shaping the future of our development. Our development used to be strictly waterfall. And then CMMI, such measurement-driven method become available to us. And then we spend a tremendous amount of time studying guidelines like these areas of optimizing our process like CMMI. And then we only to find it's so hard for our development team members to study such guidelines and to remember them and to be able to constantly using such best practices in our daily work. And then Scrum came. As the method is so simple, it becomes very useful, and team member can practice it easily. But as Agile becomes popular, becomes so useful, people start to practice it, we want our team to be more scalable. We want the process to be more maintainable. That's why we see Agile teams are practicing Agile process in a hybrid way. But before we talk too much about the future being hybrid, let's appreciate what is a Scrum process and what Scrum can do for us. Well, Scrum rely on the team. Team are the people who are involved or who are directly contributing to our development process and results. And we introduce a set of roles. The roles like the product owner, Scrum Master, development team, we further group them as PICs. And the roles are the customers, the users, the stakeholders, the salespersons who are selling the software, the support peoples who are troubleshooting and taking defects from the customers, the managers, the business high-level managers. They are the stakeholders. They are the chickens. So the story starts with like this. One day, the pig and the chicken are walking on the farm, and the chicken suggests, let's open a ham and an egg restaurant. So the pig paused, thought about that. So the pig answers, if so, then we're selling the meat, which means I'm sacrificing, and the egg, which to you, you do not need to sacrifice your life, but you want to be the owner of the restaurant as well. So if so, I would rather just run the restaurant myself. So while the story sounds very kind of controversial or contrasting, high contrast that owners of a process versus the shareholder of a process really belong to two group of people and leave me alone so that I can take care of the process myself. It does, to some degrees, is very helpful to build a self-driving team. In building a self-driving team for a process, a Scrum process, we further use some of the artifacts and processes like the user story, the product backlog, a release concept sprint, and a burn down report. So here is a diagram. So a development process in Scrum is mainly consists of a set of iterations. So this iteration, this is called a sprint. And multiple of them are continuously running. So the set of sprints really define the Scrum process. And this one sprint starts with a sprint backlog, which represents on day one, it's the commitment of what the team need to convert them, finish all the features as well as the defect, and convert them into the working software and deliver them so that the end users can use them. Every day this process is going, so this represents the daily stand-up meeting and the daily Scrum or the daily Agile. So what's really important is how do you select a set of features, functions, and a set of defects that you want to fix. Well, that is from the product backlog. Before the product backlog, obviously, you will have ideas, you will have customer requests, you will have suggestions from the salespersons, from the stakeholders. So therefore, the product owner is responsible to prioritize them, to create a product backlog, so that at the top of the backlog items, whether they are features, functions, or defects, represent the immediate attention that a Scrum team need to pick them up to become the commitment. And at the end, the team would use the sprint review meeting to present the working software, the team members, the owner of the task who sacrifice, who convert such function and defect into the working software, they will present them. And then there's a retrospective meeting to talk about what can be improved. So before I continue, I want to take a poll. So question 1, is story a requirement? And the answer, there are 2 answers, yes and no. Question 2, how do you manage the requirement? Should we provide functional design and user interface before a sprint or during a sprint? Or we should not document functional user interface design at all? or for some stories, we should add design. For others, we do not really need to add design or documentation for requirement. So let's take a look of one by one. Let's do the first one first.
Were you able to see the results?
Yes. So 64% says yes, in agile development, a story is a requirement. 36% says no, it is just an abstract of a requirement. So before I comment these answers, I want to see the next question results. So let's.
Well, we've only, the way this is set up is we do one at a time. So to see this one, let me see if I can.
Okay, let's do the next one. Let's wait for like 30 seconds. Okay, let's do the next one. Yeah.
The second poll has been launched now.
So let's see.
So we'll keep this poll open for 30 more seconds.
Yeah. Okay, so before
would you like
so the answer on the second question, let's do the second question.
You want to look at the second question?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull the second
question. So the question, second question, yeah, 36% says provide functional design and user interface design before a sprint start. 21% say it only do functional design and user interface during a sprint. And 43% says for some stories, we should add design, for others, we should not. So obviously, the answer to the question number one, to me the better way is to view a story just as an abstract of a requirement. The reason is just like the question number two. Actually, for some of the stories, we don't really add design. And for some of the stories, we do, at least in the Scrum process. In the Scrum process, we believe requirements are changing that so often, we don't really need to document all the requirements. It will be more effective to simply create a story, represent an abstract of what needs to be done, and more rely on the face-to-face meetings and rely on the team to deliver. Obviously, you can say, yeah, that's fine, but the team might not be that capable in terms of understanding what the product owner wants, what the customer wants. Then, therefore, we should really have functional design, and we should have user interface design, and more detailed documentation on the requirement for such story. And then versus others believe, during the sprint, while you used to face-to-face meeting, the working software actually so often helps you to understand the requirement better. Therefore, you should catch up. You should really improve your functional design. And then it's absolutely true. For some of the stories, you don't really add design at all. And for others, you do. And actually, a Scrum process emphasizes requirement changes so often. So managing the document such requirement is not as effective as taking story just as an abstract. Okay, so for question number 3 and number 4, I just want to do it so that, without necessarily spending too much explain it, so question number 3, how much testing effort should be involved for each sprint? We should test as much as needed to ensure the working software is defect-free. And then second one, a good agile will finish a sprint with no defect or almost defect-free. Number 3, not necessary. Developers should focus on development work. Just enough testing so the sprint workload can be finished at a desired quality level. And question number 4, let's do question number 3 first.
Okay, we'll leave the polls open for about 15 more seconds.
Yeah. So the answer is number 4 is dominating. Just enough testing so that the workload can be finished at a desired quality level, which I think is about right. Question number 3. Let's go question number 4. How to find defect for development sprint? Defect should be found by end user and QA team. Defect should be found by the end user only. Defect should be found by the end user and the agile team. Defect should be found by the end user, the agile team, and the QA team. Okay, so the answer to question number 4
Oh, I think people are still just
sure.
voting. How about we close it right now?
Okay, so already 60% voted. So I would say about, so far 93% showing answering is by agile team and the QA team and end users. So an agile team in a Scrum process, please don't forget, includes and integrated QA members. So we'll continue now. So Scrum relies on a few meetings to make sure process are properly managed. And here's the burn down report, often used for monitoring the progress of an agile sprint. So on the day 0, on the day 1, the features and the tasks are committed, representing the workload of a team for the entire sprint. So this line, the blue line, indicates the time remaining effort. The green line indicating the number of tasks that are still remain open. Obviously, the goal is to, on the day 0, all the tasks are created and all the time are estimated. On the end day of a sprint, all the tasks are closed. The time remaining effort becomes 0. During the process, on day 3, this 50 represents the number of tasks. This represents the hours or the day, the time remaining hours. This represents there are 1 task get delivered finished. Day 5, another task finished. Day 8, 3 tasks done. Day 11, another 4 tasks closed. And day 21st, 2 tasks closed. So question, if you think about the burn down report, it represents how the team makes the achievement on a daily basis to finish all the task workload. And then if you think about the working software get delivered to the end user that become useful, then you would conclude on day 11, if the working software gets delivered, then some of the functions representing these tasks finished can be used. Here's the velocity report. So the velocity report takes a little bit different approach. It associates each task with points and use such points to measure the size of the task so that as you finish the task, the points get get accomplished, representing the value you have contributed to the working software by a Scrum team. Meaning, some of the tasks have more value than other tasks. Therefore, the contributions a team member makes should not be just based on the number of tasks closed, but rather based on the number of points accomplished by each team member, contributing to the success of the working software. That is the velocity report. So why do we see that in the real world the pure agile process get hybrided? Well, mainly I think there are limitations of pure agile process like Scrum. There's no clear model for large projects with multiple agile teams. How do you manage the task-to-task relationship when you commit the sprint workload for each team? There's no common object for you to define the relationship of the task being committed for team 1 versus the task being committed for team 2. And there's no clear model of QA testing with the development. As a matter of fact, if you think about the Scrum process, all those processes and artifacts are heavily focused on the development process, not on the QA testing process. There's no testing standard. There's no testing plan, test cycle as the artifacts. No support for requirement-driven, so therefore there's no total traceability model. And there are a few limitations. So before we start to talk about the SpecDD, let's think about what is an ideal agile development method. And I think any great working software development method should improve the teams, not only the productivity, like the Scrum, obviously